Bible.
Right.
So that's why we're a Judeo-Christian country. Okay, now, if you were a Muslim, you've got a holy book that's going to say the same thing. Your holy leaders are going to ensure that you're following like the Quran. And then the Buddhists are going to have something similar. So why would you want to live in a country that doesn't have those, like the Bible? We're a Judeo-Christian country, so the Bible is our guiding light. And why would you want to live here if you weren't a Christian? Well, or at least a Jewish person, which we're reading from the Torah right now. So Jewish people say, we were here first. You Christians came later. But anyway, why would you want? I wouldn't want to live in a country with Sharia law.
No.
Goodness gracious. Um, or if you were a Hindu, why would you want to live in a Muslim country? So anyway, each religion has got their holy book. I happen to believe we chose well.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but why would you want to live here if you can't follow our holy book? And it was just occurring to me that these people that want to, I mean, there was a point in time up to 1820 in Massachusetts. If you weren't a professed Christian, you could be put in jail.
Wow.
Up to 18 and 20, which wasn't all that long after, 30 years after the country was formed. But still, it was part of the Massachusetts law. What happened?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have
maybe
to
that's
say.
why the Jews went to New York
No.
and Florida.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Leading by example. It's, that's another thing about the calling to leadership in a faith community. You have to be very careful about how you represent the Creator.
Yes.
I see some of these televangelists that, why are they leading that way? Why are they doing what they're doing? So many have been caught in sin, of one type or another. And it's like they don't believe in the God that they claim to serve, because if they did, they would know that he sees everything. And there's no hiding what they're doing. I think of, you know, um Christian artists, musicians. There have been several who, and I was going to mention names, but I think we all know who we're talking about. So many committing adultery, so many deciding that they're going to be gay, to live a double life. And these are people that others look up to. People of faith look up to these Christian artists, Christian leaders. And what do they see? They see, nothing but hypocrisy. And I think that's, for the most part, that's why we lose people out of the faith community, because they think, well, these are hypocrites. Why should I, keep on keeping on? But and what they don't realize is, if they have an aversion to the behavior of these fallen leaders and fallen Christian stars, why don't they pick up the mantle and they be the example?
Right.
you know, if they really have an aversion to what, you know, what's going on. So,
Another thing, like I mentioned last week,
mhm,
when we speak speak about God or things of God and
mhm,
living a godly lifestyle, um, it's a poor reflection on Adonai, but also it's like I said, it's taking His name in vain.
yeah, it is truly. It is. Okay. Let's see. Who's next to read? I think it's Yochanan.
Yes.
Okay. So if you would start at 7
Okay.
and let's see, go to the end of 13.
All right. And when the sun goes down, he shall be clean, and afterward eat the set apart offerings, because it is his food. He does not eat that which dies or is torn by beasts, becoming unclean by it. I am Yahweh. And they shall guard my charge, lest they bear sin for it and die thereby when they profane it. I, Yahweh, set them apart. And no stranger eats the set apart offering. A sojourner with the priest or a hired servant does not eat the set apart offering. But when the priest buys a being with his money, he does eat of it, and one who is born in his house does eat his food. And when the priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set apart offerings. But when a priest's daughter is a widow or put away and has no child and has returned to her father's house as in her youth, she does eat her father's food, but no stranger eats of it.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So, earlier when Kifa was reading, it speaks about the being who has touched um, these unclean things are unclean until evening, and so now, then it says when the sun goes down, okay, so it's evening, then he shall be clean again, and then afterward he can eat those holy offerings because it's his food. Um, and it says okay, and we're not to eat those things which are, you know, we can't eat roadkill. So something that's died or been torn apart by beasts, because that renders it unclean. Um, so we're not to eat roadkill or anything that dies naturally, something that, you know, is poisoned or just old. Um, or is hit by a car or anything like that. And then it says, "You're to guard my charge." You're, you know, this rule, um, lest they bear sin for it and die when they profane it. So this is a very serious thing. Yah has pretty much laid it out. You know, if you don't observe this law and you sin against it, you sin against me and you're going to die. Um, and let's see, the set apart offering, a stranger is not to eat of it. And whenever it says stranger, it's speaking about someone who is not a believer. They're a stranger. They're pagan. They're godless, and so they're not to eat the holy things,
Right.
the holy offering. They're not to touch that. Um, let's see, a sojourner with the priest or a hired servant does not eat the set apart offering. Okay, so again, the sojourner is somebody who's traveling with that priest, but they're not of the people. Maybe they're just, you know, in the company of that priest, or they're a hired servant. They're not necessarily part of the community. They can't eat the set apart offering. And then it goes on. Let's see. When the priest buys a being with his money, okay. So if he buys a servant, purchases a servant, he does eat of it. And one who is born in his house does eat his food. So someone that's brought in to the household. Let's see. So I'm looking at number 10, and it says a hired servant does not eat the offering, but if the priest buys someone, then he can eat it. So I am assuming that the hired servant is not a servant of the priest, is simply a hired servant, and may not be part of the faith community. But one that the priest does buy, because a priest can't bring anything or anyone into his household unless they are part of the community, unless they've been set apart for Yahweh. Otherwise, he wouldn't bring anyone into the house. Or maybe the priest is bringing in a bondservant, maybe someone who is working off a debt, and out of kindness, he brings that person into his household. He purchases them. In other words, he pays that debt, and so now that person is part of his household. So, presumably he's also being educated by the priest, and the priest knows that, he's also part of the faith community. And then it goes on, when a priest's daughter is married to a stranger, she does not eat of the set apart offerings. So, in other words, this woman, the daughter, is married to someone who is not of the faith, her faith community, or the priest's faith community. And so he's or she is defiled by a pagan, even though she's married this pagan. So, she would be under his authority, so, there's a chance that maybe she adopted the religion of her pagan husband. So she's not to eat of the set apart offerings. But when the priest's daughter is a widow, or put away, in other words, or divorced, and has no child, and has returned to her father's house, as in her youth, so she's come under the authority of her father once again, she does eat her father's food, but no stranger eats of it. So she cannot bring a child home with her who would be the child of this stranger. But if she's a widow or divorced and has no child, she can return. She can start over with her family, so she can eat of it. Okay, any observations there?
On verse 12,
Mm-hmm.
priest's daughter is married to a stranger. Well, she can't eat set apart offerings too, for the fact of whatever spirits her husband is controlled by. She is also controlled by them too, because she's coming to a soul tie.
Yeah, intimate relation with a pagan. Yeah. A lot of people don't think about that, when they have relations with somebody, and even within marriage, you see people who, oh, it's okay that, and you even see Christians marrying Muslims, or Hindus or whatever, and oh, love conquers all, but they don't see that there's a spiritual aspect to that union.
It's like music that we listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit controls that music artist. When you listen to that music, you also become a soul tie
Oh, yeah.
because that spirit transfers through the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What you let in your ear gates can really trip you up. Yep. Okay. So let's see. So now we are at 14. And then what do we have? Okay, we got let's see. All right. So 14 and let's see. Okay. And I think it's my turn.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I got to keep track of this. I need like a scoreboard. Okay, where am I? All right. Starting at 14. And when a man eats the set apart offering by mistake, then he shall give a set apart offering to the priest and add 1/5 to it. And let the priests not profane the set apart offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Yahweh, or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set apart offerings. For I am Yahweh who sets them apart. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aharon and his sons, and to all the children of Israel, and say to them, Any man of the house of Israel, or of the strangers in Israel, who bring his offering for any of his vows, or for any of his voluntary offerings, which they bring to Yahweh as a burnt offering, for your acceptance is a male, a perfect one from the cattle, from the sheep, or from the goats. Whatever has a defect, you do not bring, for it is not acceptable for you. Okay, so, okay, I still have a little light. So when a man eats the offering by mistake, I think of when David came into the holy place and ate the showbread, because he was hungry. But, a person can, who doesn't know the rules may come in and eat the set apart offering by mistake. With I don't think it would be the showbread, but it may be the offering, that's still on the altar. It's already been roasted. It's already been part of it burnt. And he's hungry, and then he eats it by mistake. Then he's got to replace it. He has to give an offering to the priest to replace it, but he also adds 1/5 to it. So there is interest compounded daily. And then it goes on to say, let not the priest profane the set apart offerings of the children of Israel. So if somebody from the children of Israel brings an offering, brings a goat or a sheep, or or something as an offering, the priests are not to dismiss the offering. I imagine, in the distant past, there have been times where someone brings an offering and the priest, maybe was full of himself or something and said, well, this is not good enough, and toss the offering away. I don't know. But in either case, the priest is not to profane a holy offering of the children of Israel, or any of it that's already been accepted and slaughtered and offered on the altar. They're not to profane it. They're to still treat it as something holy. And let's see. Let's see. Okay, so which the offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Yahweh, or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set apart offerings. So Okay, I'm a little confused here. Okay, so it's talking about the priests are not to profane the offerings or allow. It seems like it's talking about the children of Israel. They're not to profane the set apart offerings of the children of Israel, which they lift up to Yahweh, or allow them to bear the crookedness of trespass when they eat their set apart offerings. So I'm wondering if that would be not forgiving, not considering the sins of the children of Israel forgiven, and yet they still consume the offering. They're supposed to accept the offering as holy, as an offering, as a sacrifice to cover the sin of the children of Israel who have offered it. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I've got a comment, not
Mhm.
specifically on the line of thought you were at, but
Okay.
it also has to do with um, uh, the person bringing the offering to the Cohen,
Mhm.
and for the Cohen to make a judgment call on whether this offering, this animal,
Mhm.
is acceptable.
Mhm.
And that's like a courtroom that has one judge, that one Cohen.
Mhm.
But in our judicial system, where the next level is a three-person judge level, it's more than one judge. So that if the court of one judge made a mistake,
Mhm.
and um, it's not in scripture that I've heard so far in Torah, but if the Cohen rejects, does the person bringing the offering have a right to saying, "I'd like a second opinion," considering the
Um,
guy may have just walked 2 miles to
mhm.
bring this animal up, and he's got to walk back and then search for another animal and then walk 2 miles again. Uh, a second opinion. Now the courtyard is going to have more than one Cohen there. There's people. There's a lot of people bringing uh, their sacrifice, and
Right, but
I'm
only
in.
one will be serving in the temple as the high priest.
Right, but as far as the sacrifice goes,
Mhm.
that sacrifice being acceptable, I'm trying to envision um, the uh, the process of this animal being accepted even before it's slaughtered,
Mhm.
um, and the just because one Cohen says this is acceptable, it would be acceptable for the Cohen to have their meat, but for the sacrifice that goes into for like the showbread
Mhm.
inside of the Holy of Holies, it seems like there would have to be like a group of Cohen. Uh, Also, the high priest say this is acceptable.
Well, only one Cohen at a time goes into the Holy of Holies.
Of course, but I mean, we're still in the courtyard,
Right.
and somebody brings bread up for an offering, or they bring a sin offering, an animal. There's a process of physically getting from the entrance of the tabernacle, the courtyard, and slowly through the approval process, it a certain select items end up being qualified for the Holy of Holies. Did we already read that in the Torah
Mm.
earlier? or it may be too granular
Yeah.
at this time. I mean, somebody. I mean, just thinking about things. You're at the gateway of the courtyard. You're trying, for one thing, not to step in the river of blood that's flowing out.
Right.
And then I mean, it had to have traffic cops, where to go and where not to go and what was acceptable. And the Cohen are trying to keep themselves clean from everything that's going on. I've
Well,
never seen a
before,
movie yet
yeah.
reflecting what it might have actually been like.
Well, before you can actually get into the courtyard, because that's where so the inner court is where the priests work. And so not only is the offering inspected, but the people bringing the offering are inspected. They can't, transfer whatever is wrong with them, onto the animal and have that be acceptable. But here, I just wanted to point out, in 15, it's talking about the priests. The priests should not profane the offering.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if they do something, or if they are unclean in any way, they cannot transfer that uncleanness to the offering, or they cannot dismiss the offering, without, they cannot fail to keep that offering holy. It's like there's no 3-second rule. It's not like, oh, the burger fell on the ground, it's there for 3 seconds. We'll serve it anyway. You have it's a higher standard. So it's speaking of the priests not profaning the offering,
Okay.
in any
Well,
way.
accepted. I appreciate your comment. I have one more comment.
Sure.
We've already been given the dimensions of the courtyard,
Right.
and it was always hard. I'm putting forth right now that the layperson who is bringing the offering,
Hmm.
they get to the gate or near the gate, and there's a series of Cohen outside, so that the layperson never actually gets inside the courtyard.
Right.
There
That's where the
just wouldn't
priests
be
work.
room.
Right. That's where the priests work.
That's where the priests work. So
Yeah.
the layperson would bring their offering up. The offering is judged acceptable or not, but outside of the courtyard.
Hmm.
And then if it's acceptable, then the Cohen uh, 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 takes the animal into the courtyard to its appropriate. Wait in line. It's not your turn yet. Uh, but there may be in sections. Here's the section of grain offerings. Here's the section of animal, sheep.
Hmm.
Uh, and I mean, there had to be organization
Sure.
amongst, but those are all Cohen inside.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Cohens and Levites. Yeah.
I couldn't remember if I've read so far in Torah the fact that only Cohen were inside of the courtyard.
No, the Leviim is also there.
Sure.
Yeah, because they're serving around the outskirts of the temple or the
Right.
tabernacle.
And so if a Cohen had slaves, the slaves would never be allowed inside the courtyard.
Right.
Okay, because those are all, you had to be a Levite for that.
Yeah, they would be at home serving.
Okay.
Hmm.
I can imagine that would be true.
Hmm. Because
So,
Mrs.
okay.
Cohen needs help, you know, chopping wood and
Well,
cutting
she's probably the most strict. You think Torah is strict. He was probably really strict.
Oh no!
I mean, she had her own set of rules. No,
Oh
just kidding.
no! Oh, stop it!
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay over here in this room so that I don't get hit by lightning.
Okay. Anyway, I'm done making comment. I'm just trying to picture,
Okay.
because um, every once in a while we run a. We just read a verse. Alicia just read a verse in 22 that specified an additional restriction or rule on the Cohen that was not in prior Leviticus that everybody else had to abide by.
Mm,
And when you read it, I just registered in my mind, but that was another purpose of Yahweh, including, uh, these chapters 21, 22, probably 23, this whole parasha, that the Cohen did have extra responsibility to be holy, and uh, and so anyway, I'm done.
yeah. I don't think I made it to 22. I think I ended at 20.
No, I'm talking about chapter 22.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, because 21 and 22 are all about the Cohen
Mhm.
and their should do's and should not do's.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
okay,
Yes, they're Deuteronomy and Deuteronomy.
that's right. Okay, where do I start?
Okay. Start at 21 and go to uh let's see, go to the end of 25.
Okay, I gotta put my camera down so you can hear me, but you
Okay.
can't see me.
I can't see you.
You said 21 through where?
25. End of 25.
It's getting dark. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it
have
is.
to turn on the extra lights here pretty soon.
Yep.
21 through 25.
Yes.
Um, okay, I got it. Whoever brings a sacrifice of peace offerings to Adonai in fulfillment of a vow or as a voluntary offering, whether it come from the herd or from the flock, it must be unblemished and without defect in order to be accepted. If it is blind, injured, mutilated as an abnormal growth, or has festering or running sores, you are not to offer it to Adonai, or make such an offering by fire on the altar to Adonai. If a bull or a lamb has a limb which is too long or short, you may offer it as a voluntary offering, but for a vow it will not be accepted. An animal with bruised, crushed, torn or cut genitals, you are not to offer to Adonai. You are not to do these things in your land. And you are not to receive any of these from a foreigner for you to offer as bread for your God, because their deformity is a defect in them. They will not be accepted from you.
Okay. So, we're supposed to be careful about, what we decide to offer to Yahweh, even now. Um, it speaks about a man bringing a peace offering to Yahweh to complete a vow or a voluntary offering from the cattle or the sheep. It says it is to be perfect to be accepted, with no defect. So you can't bring an animal who's blind or have any broken bones, have any sarat, any skin diseases. We're not to offer those as a burnt offering to Yahweh. It speaks about, as for a bull or a lamb, it's not supposed to have a deformed limb or a limb that's too long or too short. Um, or the animal is not supposed to be abnormally small. Even an adult animal, it's not to be abnormally small. And it's we can offer it as a voluntary offering, like above and beyond, but for a vow, it's not accepted. So you have to, there's a thing called giving your best. And when we offer something to the Most High, it's supposed to be our best.
Yes.
Anything, whether it's an animal, the danger in offering an animal that's, defective in some way is the mindset. Because in the back of your mind, well, this animal is not any good to me anymore. It's probably not going to be, reproduce because, its parts are crushed. It's lame anyway. It's not going to be able to work. It's sickly. It's old. It's, got nasty fur. And so that mindset of, it's defective anyway. This is just an easy way to kill two birds with one stone. I'll get rid of the animal and it's an offering to my creator. There's a danger in taking that attitude, which could come from offering something that's subpar. So we're supposed to give our best. Right in the beginning here, right in verse 21, it says it's to be perfect, to be acceptable to, as a sacrifice. And even it says in the last, in verse 25, we're not to even take an animal from the son of a stranger, from a pagan. Sometimes people who are not believers will say to us, would you offer prayers for me? In other words, would you put in a good word for me with your God? And that's not the kind of prayer we're supposed to offer. What does a pagan have to do with our God? They, the fact that they're pagan, they've rejected our God. If any prayer should be offered up, it should be for the salvation of that pagan, so then they can offer their sacrifice of praise or whatever the Lord puts on their heart. I know it sounds kind of rough, but really, truthfully, what does it say in scripture? The prayers of a righteous man avail much. Doesn't say the prayers of anybody avail much. No, righteous, standing uprightly, walking in the ways of Yahweh. That's who he hears. And yes, he can choose who he's going to bless and who he's going to curse, and sometimes he does hear, well, he does hear all prayers, but sometimes he does work on behalf of those who are not his. But I'm sure it's because he knows that eventually that person will be his. I think of Ruth, who she was a pagan, but when she told Naomi, her mother-in-law, your people will be my people and your God will be my God, she right then and there accepted Yahweh. And so then she was blessed after that. I mean, what a blessing to be the ancestor of the Messiah.
Right.
So, and I know I'm kind of going on a rabbit trail here, but we're supposed to give our best. And our best don't necessarily come from outside of the faith community. So we're not to offer anything that comes from, it says, the son of a stranger's hand. Don't bring it to Yahweh. He will not accept it because we don't know what the non-believer, what's connected to their offering.
Right.
So,
Eating the food offered up to idols.
Yep. Avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, comment?
Yeah.
See, I'm trying to choose the words, but in the sense here that we're talking about, it would be appropriate before I pray for somebody to ask them, which God do you pray to? And they'll probably say, huh? And I say, do you pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? And if they say no, then I would respond in one manner. If they said yes, he is the Lord of my life, I would know that that prayer would register with Yahweh and this person, because they would hopefully believe that that prayer is meaningful, and we're praying to the correct God.
Mm-hmm.
If you're praying to Muhammad, I would say, let's talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, even Muslims don't pray to Muhammad. They pray to
to
Allah. Yeah.
Allah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, when we ask somebody, where they stand, I wouldn't necessarily say, "What God do you pray to?" because that confuses people. Um, I would ask them, "Do you put your faith in Messiah Yeshua?" Or if you're speaking to somebody who, is not messianic, or do you put your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ? That's a name that they would relate to. And then they can answer yes or no.
Yeah.
We
That
our
gets more
approach is important. Our approach is important.
indeed.
Yeah.
And you've spoken to teach an evangelism class before,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we just haven't got around to it just
Yeah,
yet. But
we can do a repeat. We can do a repeat of that class. Yeah, yeah, for those who, are not aware, I do teach a class on, it's called Evangelize like Yeshua did, and mostly it's geared to speak to people, Jewish people, to share the good news with them. But the same model can be used with those who are not Jewish. So, anyway, yeah, I need to do a repeat of that class. That wound up being a good class, and it happened to, I think we met like 3 times, and covered different things and practiced, we did some role playing, and when we ended the class, right after was um, Heritage Days in Belvedere, where they had like a little carnival and a parade and everything. And we had our table. We had our little pop-up tent with a table, and we were giving out tracts and praying for people and sharing the Besorah, the good news, with people. So we need to do that again. Yeah, and especially coming up this May, the first weekend of May. In fact, it's on a Sabbath. They're planning a pride parade in Belvedere.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, groan. So, we need to be sharing the love and forgiveness of Messiah Yeshua, because so many people have embraced that lifestyle because they feel like they don't fit in anywhere, and that they need to be aware that they shouldn't have pride in sin, but also know that we serve a God that loves us and will deliver us from that spirit, and will heal us, make us whole, and then welcome, all into his kingdom, those who just want to leave the old life behind and embrace new life in Messiah Yeshua. So I'm sorry I sound like a commercial, but that's, we should be doing that. And I'm hoping we can get a group of people to do that. In any case, yeah. So I would say, if we're approaching somebody, or somebody wants prayer for anything, they know you pray. I would right off say, this is who I serve. And I need to know, do you serve him too? And start there. If they don't, then you evangelize. And then you pray for them, but
Sounds like a good approach.
yeah, it's, we don't want to cut off a tree before it has a chance to, take root in good soil, so I hope that answered some questions there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything, Yohanan, anything you have? Or okay. No. Well, I'd like to ask you to begin reading at 26 and go to the end of the chapter.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, when a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall be 7 days with its mother. And from the 8th day and thereafter, it is acceptable as an offering made by fire to Yahweh. Do not slaughter a cow or a sheep and its young on the same day. And when you bring a slaughtering of thanksgiving to Yahweh, bring it for your acceptance. It is eaten that same day. Leave none of it until morning. I am Yahweh. And you shall guard my commands and do them. I am Yahweh. And do not profane my set-apart name, and I shall be set apart among the children of Israel. I am Yahweh, who set you apart, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, to be your Elohim. I am Yahweh.
Okay. So, so he goes on to speak about, when a bull or a sheep or a goat is born, and just like a human baby, it's to be with its mother for 7 days. And then on the 8th day, then it's, it's part of the community, so to speak. So then it's acceptable, and then it's an offering made by fire to Yahweh. So as in a human baby, especially a male child, is kept with the mother for 7 days, and on the 8th day, then then there's Brit Milah, the circumcision, and that's where the child is given their name in Israel. I mean, what you will be known by in Israel. So if you're born in the United States, on the 8th day, you're given your Hebraic name, so that you will be known in Israel as, this Hebraic name. You may be George here, but you may be Gideon in Israel. So, and when you're named and you've, received Brit Milah, you are then officially part of the community. And this had to happen for Messiah Yeshua too. He had to be accepted as part of the community to represent the community. To die for Israel, he had to be part of Israel. Okay. And then the next in 28, don't slaughter a cow or sheep and its young on the same day. This is just kindness. It's already frightening for an animal, to be slaughtered. And, the shochet, the one who does the slaughtering, tries to do it as kindly and peacefully and prayerfully as possible. So in order that to maintain that peaceful, you know, for that animal to have peace as it's, leaving the land of the living, you would either bring the cow and slaughter it, but not have the baby with, because you don't want the baby to witness the slaughter of its mother, so you keep it apart. Or if you're offering that, yearling, or that young animal, you don't have its mother there. So because that causes a lot of angst and fear, and you don't want that. So that's it's a kindness, but it makes for a more pure offering. And let's see. And it talks about slaughtering the of Thanksgiving to Yahweh. And it's eaten that same day. Leave none of it till morning. So it, you don't want to have it. You don't leave meat out for too long. And then he admonishes us, guard my commandments and do them. And he repeats that he brought us out of Egypt. So he has the power to bring us, to free us, to bring us out of Egypt. And he is, our Elohim, our Elohim Yahweh. So,
Just a quick
okay.
comment.
Yeah.
On 30, we've talked about not leaving meat out for
Right.
the next day or even a couple of days afterwards. But
Right.
one thing occurred to me as I was washing dishes and a fly got inside. That
Oh,
was one of the main things too, is because flies spread disease, and if
yeah.
you're leaving food lay around, um, not only for foodborne illness but also insect illness.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yahweh's got even stricter food laws than the county does. So, yeah, I mean, for health reasons, but also when something like that, if meat spoils or comes in contact with, insects, that defiles it, you
Yeah.
know. So, okay. All right, let's go to oh wow, we still got a lot to go. We're just having too much fun, aren't we? Okay. All right. Yeah, wow. Okay. Hang in there. All right. So we're in Leviticus 23. And okay, I'll start. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as set apart gatherings, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, a set apart gathering. You do no work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, set apart gatherings, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, between the evenings, is the Passover to Yahweh. Okay. And the 15th day of this month is the festival of unleavened bread to Yahweh. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. On the first day you have a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. On the seventh day is a set apart gathering. You do no servile work. Okay, so here we have 2 of his holy feasts. The first one, of course, is the first one that's mentioned in the Bible, and it's the Sabbath. From the very beginning, at the end of his 7 days, or the 6 days of creation, Yah rested on the seventh. And every time we celebrate the Sabbath, every time we rest, it's a memorial to what he did, his creation. The next one, of course, is the Pesach, the Feast of Passover. And it is where we celebrate our freedom, him bringing us out of Egypt. And so Passover, I know now people celebrate Passover for 8 days, but that's really not Passover. It's first of all, Passover is 1 day. It's only 1 day. And it's a memorial to that one day or one night when Yahweh passed over the houses of the Israelites who had sacrificed an animal and painted their lintel and doorposts with blood to mark themselves as being those who are under Yahweh, those who claim him as their redeemer, their king. And then the next 7 days is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, and of course, because there is no time to let the dough rise before baking it, the bread was flat. It was unleavened, and that's what they ate, for the next 7 days. So, and Yahweh knew this. There's one thing about unleavened bread, it doesn't go bad. You can eat a piece of matzah from 5-6 years ago, and it will taste the same. It'll taste like cardboard. No. It'll be the same. It doesn't spoil. It does not spoil. And Yah knew this. He knew that the Israelites would be going through desert. And, if they were eating bread that had oil or butter or yeast in it, it would go bad. So he said, this is what you're going to do. And they were able to survive for the next 7 days on this bread. And the first day of the festival is considered a Sabbath, and the last day is considered a Sabbath. So we're to do no ordinary work on those days. And then we bring an offering made by fire every day for 7 days to Yahweh. And yeah, that's that. Okay. Let's see. Kifa, if you would read from 9, and let's see, go to the end of 14.
Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, after you enter the land I am giving you, and harvest its ripe crops, you are to bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the Cohen. He is to wave the sheaf before Adonai, so that you will be accepted. The Cohen is to wave it on the day after the Shabbat. On the day that you wave the sheaf, you are to offer a male lamb without defect in its first year as a burnt offering for Adonai. Its grain offering is to be 1 gallon of fine flour mixed with olive oil, an offering made by fire to Adonai as a fragrant aroma. Its drink offering is to be of wine, 1 quart. You are not to eat bread, dried grain, or fresh grain until the day you bring the offering for your God. This is a permanent regulation throughout all your generations, no matter where you live."
Okay, so this is speaking of Yom HaBikurim, which is the Feast of First Fruits. And so, and each of these feasts they're prophetic. they speak of what Yeshua did. So the Passover, he was the sacrificed lamb. Okay, and his blood is painted on the door frames of our hearts. The second one is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. He went into the grave. He was sinless, like unleavened bread, had no yeast, which is representative of sin, and he had no sin. And he went, his offering, his sacrifice was a perfect sacrifice, and he went into the grave. Then the third, the morrow after the Sabbath, which happened to be 3 days and 3 nights after Yeshua, after he was put on the execution stake, after he died. He was buried, and he was in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And it happened to be that the tomb he was in was discovered to be empty on the third day, which happened to be the first day of the week, Yom Rishon, the head of the week, and which we know it as Sunday. Just because it happened that way then doesn't mean necessarily that it's that way now, because the calendars, they shift, lunar calendar, solar calendar, there's a shifting. But in this case, it speaks of him being in the ground for 3 days. Then it speaks about the Feast of First Fruits, where the priest lifts up the sheaf. He cuts a sheaf out of the ripened grain, and he lifts it up, just as Yeshua was raised from the dead on Yom HaBikurim, on the Feast of First Fruits. So all these feasts, Yahweh doesn't do anything just arbitrarily. He does things with a purpose, so that we will remember, even though many in the church have forgotten, simply because it's not taught. But it's so that we would remember what he did. And, these ancient feasts were a precursor to what he would do, what Yeshua would do. Okay. Okay. So, Yochanan, I believe it's your turn. If you would begin at 15. Let's see. Go to the end of 21, if you would.
Okay. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourself 7 completed Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Bring from your dwellings a wave offering, 2 loaves of bread, 2 tenths, and an ephah of fine flour. They are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahweh. And besides the bread, you shall bring 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull and 2 rams. They are burnt offering to Yahweh with their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire for sweet fragrance to Yahweh. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs a year old as a peace offering. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahweh. Besides the 2 lambs, they are set apart to Yahweh for the priest. And on the same day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it, a law forever, in all your dwellings throughout your generations.
Okay, and it says it right there, a law forever. We're to observe these so that we will constantly be reminded of what Yeshua did for us. So now it speaks, you count 7 completed Sabbaths, 50 days. That's where we get the term Pentecost from. And but the original feast is Shavuot. Shavua means week, like as in a 7-day week. And Shavuot is simply the plural. So it's the Feast of Weeks. And it was on the Feast of Weeks that the tablets of the law were given to Moshe to give to the people. And so here we have the priest at Yom HaBikurim, he lifted up the sheaf of wheat. But here he lifts up 2 loaves of bread, made from the wheat. And the 2 loaves represent many things. We see in the 2 loaves the tablets of the law. We see the original and the renewed covenant. We see also Jewish and non-Jewish believers. They're made from the same dough. And so they're waved before the Lord. We think of the 2 witnesses that will come, and so on and so forth. Okay, so then besides the bread, there's 7 lambs, 7 being the number of completion and perfection, and it does say perfect ones, and then a young bull and 2 rams, and they are burnt offerings for Yah. And then we have 1 male goat as a sin offering and 2 male lambs a year old as a peace offering. So there's all these different sacrifices brought before Yahweh, and these sacrifices are also thanksgiving for the food that he provides. So let's see. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahweh. Besides the 2 lambs, they are set apart to Yahweh for the priest. So the priest gets to eat of this bread. And then it says, on that day you proclaim a set apart gathering for yourselves, and do no work, do no servile work. This is a law forever. Okay. So we know that on Shavuot, which this is, you wave the bread, and this is in thanksgiving for his provision, but also, as I mentioned before, the Torah was given to the people on Shavuot. And then many years later, the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, was given to the people in the upper room on that very same day. And so I would say that the Spirit of Yah is the gift that keeps on giving. He wants to give us provision. He wants to give us salvation. And then he gives us that infilling, that direction of his Spirit. So very meaningful. So those are the feasts that have already been fulfilled in the work of Messiah Yeshua. And we have more, just like the commercial says, but wait, there's more. We have the fall feast coming up. Okay, so from 22, and you guys let me know if you have anything to add. Okay, from 22. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahweh your Elohim. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you have a rest, a remembrance of blowing of trumpets, a set-apart gathering. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. Okay, and I'm going to keep going here. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, On the 10th day of this 7th month is the day of atonement. It shall be a set-apart gathering for you. And you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And you do no work on that same day, for it is the day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh, your Elohim. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. Okay, and let's see. Okay, and it goes on a bit, but this next feast is the first of the fall feasts. And I know modern Jews now refer to it as Rosh Hashanah, which means the head of the year. But it can't be the head of the year because it's the 7th month. The head of the year, the Rosh Hashanah, the real one, is in the spring. And it's when the moon is first seen in the biblical month of Aviv. Some call it Nisan, which is a Babylonian name, but it's Aviv in the Bible. And so this feast is the Feast of Trumpets, and that's the way we're supposed to commemorate it. It says we're to remember it, that it is the blowing of the trumpets, and it's a set apart gathering. And so we do that. So the true name of this feast is Yom Teruah, which means the day of blasting. And that's what you do, is you blast these calls on the shofar, which is Yahweh's trumpet. You don't use Dizzy Gillespie's trumpet or Satchmo's trumpet. No metal trumpet. It's done on a shofar, which is an animal horn. The only animal horn you're not to blow on that day is a cow horn or a bull horn. You're not to use any bovine horns to make shofar, because it brings up that nasty thing that happened. It brings up the golden calf incident, and we don't want to remind Yahweh of that. So we steer away from blowing the steer horn or the cow horn. So that's the Feast of Trumpets. This feast is also called the feast where no man knows the day nor the hour. Sound familiar? Because it is. When the Talmidim, Yeshua's followers, came to him and say, how will we know when your returning is? And he gave them a hint. He says, no man knows the day nor the hour. Truly, no one would, because it's the only feast that begins with the new moon, and you don't know when that is until you actually see that sliver of new moon in the sky. And so we, as modern believers, we wait for a report from Israel that it's been spotted in Israel. We may see it over here, but we go by the official report in Israel. So that's Yom Teruah. And what better day, what better way of greeting the arrival, the return of the king than with trumpets. So we keep that in mind. Okay.
Comment.
Yes.
There's I think a very practical phenomenon going on with the timing, the number of days that Yahweh has said that the feasts are supposed to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And Passover, that's 14 days after the first of the month, which is the sighting of the sliver.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 Shabbats go by, and then that's Pesach. And what's going on with the moon at that time?
Full
It's
moon.
full, and it's the brightest. So
Yep.
people don't have to celebrate Pesach in the dark.
Right.
They're going to be able to walk around without stumbling. And the same for Yom Teruah, that begins with the sliver. Then you count 2 more Shabbats,
Mm-hmm.
and that gets you to Yom Kippur.
Yep.
Which you're not going to want to celebrate in the dark.
Right.
So these were the lesser light is maximized for each of these celebrations. And I just think Yahweh was He, his magic numbers are 7, 14, and occasionally he puts a 10 in there for
Yeah.
Yom Kippur. So on this month in the fall, I always remember it by the numbers 1, 10, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't got to 14 yet here in this
Not yet.
chapter, but
Not yet.
not yet. Okay, anyway, I'm done.
Yeah, it's like multiples of 7. It's that's pretty interesting. And when you think of it also, Passover had to happen on the full moon, because when you're trying to make an escape, when you're trying to leave, like you were saying, you don't want to be stumbling, and you don't want to be missing anybody, because you couldn't see them in the dark, or, put down a suitcase or something, and forget about it because you don't see it. It's too dark to see. So you need that full moon to do those things. So, okay, and we got to so the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. That's another feast of the Lord, even though we don't feast, but we feast in his presence. And so it says we're to afflict ourselves. This is when we voluntarily fast. And I know some will say, well, we don't have to fast anymore because Yeshua did it all. And yes, he did do it all. But remember that these feasts, they're moedim, they're appointments, they're remembrances of what he did and also what he's going to do. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, speaks of a future judgment, and we're to be very aware, remind ourselves that judgment is coming. And so we're going to have to stand before him and give account for our behavior, things we did, things we didn't do. And not that we don't earn our salvation. It's because of salvation that we do these things in gratitude and in remembrance. There are memorials to what he did. And they're also a reminder to keep our eyes and ears open, because he's going to do something on those days as well. Okay, so and I ended when? I ended at 31, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was before Shavuot or Sukkot.
Okay. So, okay, next reader. Starting at 32. And let me see how far we're going. Okay. 32 until the end of 38.
It will be for you a Shabbat of complete rest, and you are to deny yourselves. You are to rest on your Shabbat from evening, the 9th day of the month, until the following evening. Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell the people of Israel, on the 15th day of this 7th month is the feast of Sukkot, for 7 days to Adonai. On the first day, there is to be a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. For 7 days, you are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. On the 8th day, you are to have a holy convocation and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. It is a day of public assembly. Do not do any kind of ordinary work." Next is 37. Shall I continue? It's a conclusion
Yeah,
type
go
paragraph.
ahead. Yeah. Okay.
These are the designated times of Adonai that you are to proclaim as holy convocations and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai, a burnt offering, a grain offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings, each on its own day. besides the Shabbats of Adonai, your gifts, all your vows, and all your voluntary offerings that you give to Adonai. Turning
Okay.
the page.
Huh?
Turning the page.
Turning the page.
Okay. There's one big paragraph left in chapter 23.
No. There's more.
That's why I say there's one big paragraph. Oh,
Oh,
it was two. One
no.
small paragraph.
There's a 39 going to 44.
Right. That's one big paragraph and one tiny paragraph.
Oh, okay. My scriptures are in small pieces. Okay. All right. So we'll stop there for the moment. Okay. So he concludes saying pretty much saying that these are the Sabbaths, the set apart days, and you are to offer these sacrifices. We're to observe all these things, and it says no servile work on these special days. Um, I know those of us who have gone or do go somewhere to work, to report in for work. Your mind is on your work. Well, if you're doing your vocation, if you're going to work and it's a holy day, you're not thinking of Yahweh. You're thinking of what's going on at work. Maybe there's orders that need to be filled. Maybe there's conflicts that need to be resolved. Your mind is not on Yahweh and that appointment that you've got with him. So that's why he says, don't do any ordinary work, no servile work. These are appointments with him. Okay. Yochanan, if you would read from 39 to into 44.
On the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the fruit of your land, observe the festival for Yahweh for 7 days. On the first day is a rest, and on the 8th day is a rest. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day of the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall observe it as a festival to Yahweh for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generations. Observe it in the 7th month. Dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites dwell in booths, so that your generations know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel.
Okay, so this is Sukkot, the feast of Sukkahs, the feast of tabernacles, and they're speaking of taking the fruit of goodly trees, and that's the etrog. It's like a oversized lemon, citrus fruit, and then the branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees. That would be the myrtle and willow leaves, branches of the stream, and you join them together, and this is considered a wave offering. So you shake, shake, shake in all your in the four directions and up and down as a thanksgiving offering to Yahweh, for provision, because you can eat the fruit, and also these are symbols of the character, what the character of a child of the king is supposed to be like. And I go into more detail when we celebrate Sukkot. But these are all remembrances, and so the etrog, the citron that you can eat, it's edible, and the branches remind us of the branches that form the rooftop of these booths, and you're supposed to be able to see the stars through the branches that are on the make up the roof of the booth. Okay, and Oof. All right. Last chapter. All right. So we're in chapter 24. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring to you clear oil of pressed olives for the light to make the lamps burn continually. Outside the veil of the witness in the tent of meeting, Aharon is to arrange it from evening until morning before Yahweh continually, a law forever throughout your generations. He is to arrange the lamps on the clean gold lampstand before Yahweh continually. And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it, 2/10 of an ephah in each cake, and you shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, on the clean table before Yahweh. And you shall put clear frankincense on each row, and it shall be on the bread as a remembrance, portion, an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On every Sabbath, he is to arrange it before Yahweh continually from the children of Israel, an everlasting covenant. And so they're speaking of the lampstand, which that's kind of a representation right there. This is a really little one. I don't think you can put any oil in this one, but anyway, that's the representation of the lampstand. I don't have a representation of the table of showbread, but we know what that looks like, I believe. Okay, Kifa, if you would read from 8 until the end of 14. I know you're there. I can hear you breathing.
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
looking for 8.
Yeah, Leviticus 24, verse 8
Yeah. Okay.
through the end of 14.
Regularly, every Shabbat, he is to arrange them before Adonai. They are from the people of Israel as a covenant forever. They will belong to Aaron and his sons, and they are to eat them in a holy place, because for him they are of the offering for Adonai made by fire, especially holy. This is a permanent law. Verse
10.
10, yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
There was a man who was the son of a woman of Israel and an Egyptian father. He went out among the people of Israel, and this son of a woman of Israel had a fight in the camp with a man of Israel, in the course of which the son of the woman of Israel uttered the name Yehud Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in a curse. So they brought him to Moshe. His mother's name was Shlomit, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. They put him under guard until Adonai would tell them what to do. Adonai said to Moshe, Take the man who cursed outside the camp. Have everyone who heard him lay their hands on his head, and have the entire community stone him.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
that's through 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it speaks of Aaron and his sons serving in the set apart place, and making these offerings by fire. Okay. Then it speaks of the son of Yisraelit woman and Mitzrai man who went out among the children of Israel, and he got into a fight with one of the Israelis. And during the fight, the son of the woman is Israeli woman, and um, the man from Egypt, he blasphemed the name of Yahweh. I mean, it's in capitals here. He blasphemed the name and he cursed. So this was a big no-no. This was not taken lightly by Yahweh, and so his judgment was that the man was to be taken outside the camp and stoned. We are not to take the name of Yahweh in vain. And so many people are so flippant with his name. And some will say, well, I just say GD or whatever, or they used the word, his title of God, in a flippant way. And so they'll say, well, I didn't use his name, his real name, but still you used his office, his authority, who he is. When you think of the name, in Hebraic thought, a name is your authority. It's your character. It's who you are, what you do. So yes, even though you did not use his name, Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, you didn't use that, the holy name in a unholy way. You disparaged his authority, and it's the same. So he but here it says he actually used the holy name in his cursing, and that was punishable by death. It's yeah, we let things go too much in this culture. Okay, all right. Well, Yochanan, if you would, trying to find a halfway place here. This is 15. Why don't you just read till the end? If you would. Take a nice big drink of water.
And speak to the children of Israel, saying, anyone who curses his Elohim shall bear his sin. And he who blasphemes the name of Yahweh shall certainly be put to death, and all the congregation certainly stone him, the stranger as well as the native. When he blasphemes the name, he is put to death. And he who smites the life from any man shall be certainly put to death. And he who smites a beast repays it body for body. And when a man inflicts a blemish upon his neighbor, and he has done so, it is done to him. Or as he has done so, it is done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he inflicts a blemish upon him, so it is done to him. And he who smites a beast repays it, and he who smites a man to death is put to death. You are to have one right ruling for the stranger and for the native, for I am Yahweh your Elohim. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, and they brought the one who cursed outside the camp and stoned him with stones. And the children of Israel did as Yahweh commanded Moshe.
Okay, so this is serious. Taking, bringing the name of Yahweh to nothing. And I know some say, well, it means you're not supposed to curse, and it's more than that. And when we speak his name, we are to speak his name, especially when we are praying, when we are praising, we are to speak his name. Because if we don't speak his name, like a lot of Orthodox Jews do, they will say Adonai or Adoshem or Hashem, or the Lord, another word in place of his actual name. That in that you are bringing his name to nothingness. You're not even saying his name. This is simply saying that when you say his name, you are not to dishonor it.
Right.
You're not to use it as a filth word. It's not to be part of a curse. It's supposed to be used only when praying and praising and worshiping. And the penalty is death by stoning. So it carries the same penalty as killing somebody, because you've brought another person to nothing. They are no longer in this world. Anything that they would accomplish in their life has come to an end. Any children that they would have brought into the world has come to an end. It's said that if you save a life, it says if you save the whole world, all the generations that would have come from that life that a person snuffs out, that is punishable by death. And I know a lot of people are against the death penalty, but it's biblical. It is biblical. And I know they say, well, doesn't the Bible say thou shalt not kill? No, it says thou shalt not murder. Murder is done with hatred and planning and with evil intent, but this is retribution. This is Yah's punishment, his judgment. And if you harm somebody or you harm someone's animal, you have to repay. You're responsible for the loss of that animal, and what that animal brings to a family. If you hit somebody's cow with your car as it's crossing the road and you kill it, that family cannot will have no milk from that cow, nor meat. That cow cannot feed its young or produce more young for that farmer. So there's punishment for that as well. And it speaks about harming a human being. It says when a man inflicts a blemish upon his neighbor, basically, if you've bruised your neighbor or you've cut him or broken an arm, it's supposed to be repaid. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And, if he inflicts a blemish, then a bruise, he gets bruised also. So this is the justice of Yahweh, which is high above the justice that we see, especially now that we see in this country and around the world. And again, he states, you are to have one right ruling for the stranger and for the native, for those who are not of your faith, the faith of Yah, or for those who are obedient to Yah, who have the faith. Whether you're in covenant or out of covenant, the same thing applies, same ruling applies, and he puts his name on it. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And then they took this person outside the camp and brought judgment on him. They stoned him to death. So that is the end of the readings. It was a long one this time. I want to thank Kifa and Yochanan for hanging in there and drink lots of coffee. But thanks for hanging in there. I want to remind everybody that we have Shabbat this weekend on the Shabbat, on Sabbath, which is Saturday for those who don't know. And it begins at 1 p.m. Central. We'll be online as well as in person. We'd love to see you there in person, but if you can't make it in person, please tune in. We will be online, and we would love to see you. And I think Yahweh would love to see you there too as well. So I guess that's it for tonight. And I want to thank Yochanan and Kifa and all those who stuck with it for coming and participating. So any last words?
No, it was a good session. We talked about a lot, and we could talk about these subjects even more. But we'll save some of the discussion for future.
Yeah. It's good. Anything to add, Yochanan?
Nope.
Nope. He's ready for bed. I see the eyes kind of going, ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to say nighty night to everybody and shalom, shalom.